die. 13 more battle reports and more. Everybody.
Hey, it's Steve here with another bat rep for you. In fact, 2 bat reps. I got 2 games in this week, so I've got both games here in one video for you. Both games I played with Maddox, and that list looks like this. So it's Maddox with a Squire, and this time I've just got the Hurricane in her battle group, and then she's paired up with Lattimore and Stormblade Captain in Strange Ways, 2 full units of Stormlancers, and Stormblade, a unit of Stormblade Infantry, Stormblade CA, and 2 Stormblade weapon attachments. And this is a list that's a bit of a progression from my previous Maddox list that I was playing, because with the old Maddox list, I played it with a couple of heavies. I found that because the list was pretty fast, that the 2 heavies were... She doesn't have any speed boost for heavies, so the 2 heavies were sort of hanging back quite a lot and not really getting into the fight. So my way around that is to include the Hurricane, which can then she can then put snipe up on the Hurricane, and it gives him some really long distance guns, and slam guns pretty useful, knockdown very useful, and it's nice to be able to get for him to be able to contribute to the fight even before the Stormlancers get to their targets. And I've got him in there with Strange Ways. So Strange Ways is in there basically as a focus relief for Maddox. So Maddox is effectively playing on 8 focus with the Squire and Strange Ways there. And on the rare occasions that I would need magical weapons, then you can just give magical weapons to the shooting on the Hurricane, and that's really useful as well. And it's pretty crazy that even though I've got the Hurricane in here, I can still have almost the entire Stormblade boat and 2 maximum units of Stormlancers and Maddox. So it's I feel like it's a pretty strong list. It's very good attrition because of her feat. Power 18s across the board on all the infantry is excellent, especially with the speed of the Stormlancers included, and the Pathfinder that she can give to everyone. So it's very difficult for the opponent to ignore a pretty major alpha strike. And then as far as scenario is concerned, you get pushes on everything with beatback with that feat. So that also includes the impact attacks from the horses. So it means that each Stormlance can beat back the heavy, for example, 2 inches, one after the other. And it means a unit of Stormlancers is very effective at pushing enemies around. So yeah, it's got a pretty reasonable scenario angle as well. And finally, because there's only 1 Warjack, and because she has the focus support from the Squire and Strange Ways, she quite often has, and all she's doing is upkeeping her spells every time. She quite often has at least 3 focus camped every turn, which makes her much able to play much further up the table. The Hurricane also gives her plenty of angles for hiding behind him. And so scenario is not as unlikely as it used to be, and she doesn't just depend on getting that alpha to win a game. So with all that in mind, the first game I had was up against Menoth, and it was a list with Severius 2, and in his battle group he had the Hierophant, Blessing of Vengeance, which I believe is a character Warjack, the 2 Reckoners, a Templar, a Redeemer, and a Crusader. So lots of metal in that list. And also the Covenant of Menoth, Vassal of Menoth, 2 Vassal Mechanics, 2 minimum, I think, 4-man units of Choir of Menoth, and also Visgoth, Juvia, Roven, and his Honor Guard. So, fairly high number of boxes, and Severius 2 being quite a strong control caster. So it was set up to be quite an interesting game. Here's what the table looked like. I believe I got the first turn, and obviously this is the scenario with the 2 large circles. So, and there's a big line of sight blocking obstruction, the well in the middle of the table. So this game was obviously going to be split in 2. So ideally what I was doing here is setting up to contest the right-hand zone just to stop scoring, try and use the forest to stop my opponent from scoring in that zone, and then trying to stop him getting into the left-hand zone to allow me to score the left-hand zone as much as possible. So my deployment is a little bit heavier on the left with my Stormblades on the left there. The Hurricane is in the middle. It's quite nice to be able to block line of sight to him using that obstruction, but also it's very difficult for my opponent to get charge angles, whereas because he's such a big base, it's not so difficult for him to get line of sight for his shots. And then, the unit of Storm Lancers on the right just there to hopefully prevent my opponent from scoring in the right-hand zone. So here's my first turn, including the pre-move from the Stormblades, and you can see basically 13-inch threat range for charges on the Storm Lancers means that I can park them on one side of the zone, and then anything that tows into the other side of the zone is then automatically within my charge range. One mistake I made on this turn was that I didn't pre-measure my Hurricane, what he could do, and so I walked him and then measured my shots with snipe up, and then I obviously found out that I couldn't actually shoot anything. So I did a couple of shots with the cannons which didn't scatter in any useful direction, but what I really should have been doing is running up the Hurricane that time. I might have said Stormwall just now. Running up the Hurricane and getting him much further forward. There's no chance of him getting charged on the following turn, so he would have been much more useful on my next turn to if he had been 5 inches further forward. So here's my opponent's move. So he was unable to get anything in the zone. Those Menoth Jacks are pretty slow. They got pretty good armor, but they really actually rely on their buffs and on the enemy debuffs from Menoth to bring them up to speed with all the other Jacks. They're nice and cheap, however. This is where I have my opportunity to lock down the scenario game. And I think this is where I made a bit of a mistake. So here's my following turn. So what I've done here is more or less just consolidated my position in both zones. So on the right, you can see I'm using the forest to try and give them a defense bonus and also to protect them from the distance on the charges from many of his Jacks. Got 3 heavies bearing down on that zone. But I feel like if I get a decent alpha off with Maddox's feet, then I could probably take down a couple of heavies. With that unit of Storm Lances and the Hurricane backing him up. At this point, my opponent's got the no shooting buff up on all his Jacks, so unless I've got magical weapons, I'm not able to target any of his Jacks for shooting. Not too worried about it because I feel like on the charge on feet turn, I'd be able to take down do a lot on attrition here. So and on the left, so I think I made a little bit of a mistake here. We discussed this after the game. And so what I did was I set up all of my stuff just outside of charge range of his Jacks, which, as you can see, is about halfway across the circle there. And what this does is it allows him to bring anything he wants into the zone, but it means I will completely destroy it on the following turn. So that's not a bad strategy, but what we discussed later is that it actually probably would have been better just to sacrifice maybe 2 of my Storm Lancers, just to put them right up in the face of the 2 Jacks that are threatening that side of the table. And that way, both of those Jacks have to deal with the Storm Lancers rather than being able to just run into the zone. I mean, they might get free strikes, and that would expose Severius to getting charged by Storm Lancers on my turn. So that would have been an option. I still had all of my Stormblades, and then the other half of the unit of Storm Lancers, they would still be in the zone and could probably be towing the outside of the zone, so his side of the zone at that point. But yeah, I decided to play it a bit safer, and so that's what happened. I've got a bit of a problem because I'm playing so wide because of these 2 zones. Maddox can't get everyone in her feet on feet turn, so at this point I had to choose between the left hand right hand zone, and I felt like it's the left hand zone is my strongest zone, and I would also have the opportunity to possibly run her up and score 2 points if I can dominate that zone as well. So she's up on the hill now, but she's sort of hanging over towards the left hand zone, which means these guys in the right hand zone, I'm not too worried because I feel like they can just sit there and contest. All they have to do is stop him scoring. And unfortunately, the Hurricane had threat, but was a little bit ineffectual in this game altogether. I believe I put magical weapons on him with strange ways, but then I didn't really use it to good effect. So yeah, I still need to work on what I'm doing with the Hurricane, but I still feel like it's better than the two heavies that were in this list before. So here's what my opponent did, and I think what he did was pretty excellent on this turn. So he saw that he wouldn't be able to score in the right-hand zone, so all he did was get his jacks in position to probably start killing Stormlancers on the following turn, providing that he survives. So he's got his arc node in the trench there, and he's got two heavies, one towing in, one completely in the zone. But that's a bit of a problem to me, so if I was able to get over there with Maddox to do my feat, then I could push them all out of the zone and score points over there. But unfortunately, like I said previously, she can't quite fit over there. This was also Severius's feat turn, so he killed a couple of Stormblades and the Stormblade Captain, I think, and that left some hazards on the table as well. He tried to kill Strange Ways. I think he left them on one box, so that was pretty unlucky, I think. Strange Ways, very useful piece, especially he's basically running the Hurricane on his own in this game. And then, the genius tactic here was that he got his, I think it was one of the cheaper jacks, I can't remember what it's called, Redeemer maybe. He's just towing into the zone. So I think he's pretty much accepting that he's going to lose that on this turn, but what it does is it prevents me scoring on this turn. And then straight behind him, he's got a little, a small base model, I think it's one of the mechanics, possibly a member of the choir, and it's there just to prevent me pushing his jack out of the zone. So he's forcing me that I have to destroy the jack in order to claim that zone for myself. So yeah, if I had done what I said before and just put one of the Lancers up there to block this jack, then he wouldn't have the jack in the zone, and I would even be able to score a point and then maybe get Maddox up there and dominate on this turn. So I chose to do my feat this turn, and this was the other big mistake of the game. So basically what I was doing was feating just to kill that one jack, and all of my Stormlancers could probably have reached him without needing Pathfinder to charge, but even if they had charged, that would have been fine as well. I didn't need to use my feat to get enough damage to kill that jack. One unit of Stormlancers probably could have handled it on their own. I sort of used the feat just to guarantee that I could get that guy out of the zone, and ran up Maddox, and now she's towing into the left-hand zone, so that would be 2 points for me on this turn. But yeah, I feel like I probably could have locked him out completely of that left-hand zone already by now. Probably could have dominated and scored on his turn, and could have even been up to 4 points by now if I'd played a little bit more aggressively. On the right-hand side, you can see one of my Stormlancers is gone now, but the others have spread out a little bit, just worried about getting charged basically on the next turn. Hurricane is still standing outside of charge range. Oh no, one of them's not dead. Lance is actually standing in front of the Hurricane, stopping his guys from charging the Hurricane. So yeah, so I'm up 2 points. The attrition's going pretty okay, but I have used my feat, so that severely reduces my chances of being able to knock out heavies just on a whim. Could still do it with this amount of hitting power, especially the Stormblades. But probably could have played a bit better. So here's the next slide. You can see that a lot of my Stormlancers on the right-hand zone are now dead, and he started being able to score, which is unfortunate. And then the left-hand zone, he's now got two heavies moved into that zone. So now I've got a bit more of a problem to clear those out with what I've got in that zone. Now that they're still a little bit problematic for the Stormblades to charge. So I've got to take out those two heavies from what I've got in the zone. Shouldn't be too much of a problem. And Severius has moved up a little bit, I believe, to start threatening with his spells on the left-hand zone in case I can't score on there. So looking at the next slide. So you can see it's not very well in focus, but I got my Hurricane up. He doesn't have anything that can push a Hurricane around, and he's committed too many of his models over onto the left-hand side to be able to smash it up in one turn. So I've got my Hurricane committed into that zone now just to stop him from scoring anymore. And then the right-hand zone, I basically really tried my best to try and take out those 2 jacks, and I failed. I killed a lot of the boxes, but I really failed to take them out. So really, this whole turn really stalled my scoring game, and actually caused me a lot of problems with attrition. I'm still looking okay, and we think we both agreed that if the game had continued, then I probably still would have been able to take him apart in attrition, especially with my Hurricane still fully functional on the other zone. I think he'd already taken a couple of shots at Severius at this point, so the assassination was still there for me. And so it looked like pretty good for me. I probably could have closed out the game a lot quicker, but unfortunately at that point I clocked myself. So that's it. I think I had maybe 30-40 seconds left on the clock, and he had a minute and a half. And so regardless of the scenario score, if you clock yourself, then you've lost. So at that point, I didn't have enough time left to kill his stuff and get them out of the zone. It's just not doable. And he had enough time that if I just clocked over to him, then he would just clock back, and then I would run out of time quicker than him. So we both agreed, because I spent maybe 15 minutes deciding whether or not to feat, and then it was still a mistake to feat at that point. And also coupled with the other few mistakes that, although if the game had continued time-wise, then I probably would have won either way, but that's what caused me to clock myself. So clocking yourself is pretty annoying, because it's the way to defeat yourself rather than your opponent having to defeat you. It's just, there's nobody that you can blame but yourself. It's your own fault if you clock yourself. It's your own fault if you kill box yourself as well, although it's a lot rarer. So a little bit of a disappointing finish to a pretty strong scenario and attrition game for me, but I think this list has got a lot of potential, just from the combination. It does have an assassination angle with snipe on the Hurricane. It does have a very strong attrition, especially with that feat, and I think it's got a pretty strong scenario element as well, because of the speed of it and the fact that I've got all those pushes available, slam guns on the Hurricane and all that, knockdown and all that sort of stuff. So moving on to the next game. And Leon's back, so finally got a game in. I think it was about 3 months since I last got a game with Leon. Unfortunately, we decided not to do the report then and there on the day, so this is from a couple of days ago. But I'm very happy that I managed to get another game in with him. Let's see if I can remember his list. So it was Butcher 3. This is old Butcher 3 list, so whatever, if you look back on the bat reps, the last time I played against Butcher 3, this will be the same list. So he's got a couple of War Arguses, and then he's got Ruin and a Devastator and a Juggernaut and 2 Kodiaks. So it's a pretty enormous, in fact there's 2 Juggernauts there, a pretty enormous battle group. He's got an Ogryn Bokor there for the shield guard to protect him from assassination, and he's also got Orin Midwinter for anti-spell nonsense, and I think he's got Madeline Corbeau in there as well, which is just all that sort of Ogryn and Orin and Madeline are all there to stop him getting assassinated, basically, although he is pretty hard to assassinate anyway. And I played exactly the same list. There it is. So it was pretty mean, because I was playing a list that I had a fair amount of practice with over the last few months, except for obviously this swapping out the Hurricane, and it's a list I'm going to be playing again in the near future. Leon hadn't gone near the game for months, so it was a little bit unfortunate for him that he had to go up against my competitive game on this game. And I handicapped myself, so I was playing on the clock, and Leon didn't have to, so I had to make sure I finished my game within an hour, and then he could take as much time as he wanted. So that was a nice way of evening things out a bit. So this time I won the roll-off, but I decided to go second because I felt like I wanted to choose the sides of the table. And I think there's nothing wrong with choosing the sides of the table. I've got quite a fast list, certainly faster than his list, and going second, so that doesn't cause me too many problems on the scenario. But I think actually this side of the table wasn't the best one to choose, because of that house on the middle zone provides perfect cover for parking a Warcaster on that flag there. So I think maybe I chose this side because of the trench, and because I thought the house would force him to, the obstruction in the middle there would force him to break up his guys and split them in 2, and then I could engage them as 1 on my side. But I don't necessarily think I chose the strongest side of the board there. Anyway, so he had first go, just running up there. We discussed that it's probably going to be quite a scenario-based game. I will hopefully get a decent alpha off on him because my guys are just faster. So I can just sit out of his charge range and just shoot if I want to. I can get 12-inch guns up on the Storm Lancers, 18 and 16-inch guns on the Hurricane. It forces him to either take shooting or to move inside of my charge ranges. Anyway, so he got his guys up a little bit there, and his intention is there to score Butcher on the flag. Based on his deployment, I also put Maddox set up to score on my flag. I got the Stormblades in a nice row there, just to get into the zone and start sacrificing themselves to stop Juggernauts getting into the zone and ruin. So I learned a bit from my last game, learning that it's fine to sacrifice units to get your opponent, prevent your opponent from going into the zone. That's even better than just sitting in the zone and waiting for him to tow in. Then I've got my Storm Lancers on the right. They're there to provide a bit of assassination threat on the Butcher, and if I get a chance to get a decent feet turn, then I could probably take out maybe 1 or 2 heavies with some help from the Hurricane there. Lattimore's just behind the Hurricane. Strange Ways just there ready to provide the Hurricane with support, and then most of my Storm stuff is on the left, so that's where the Stormblade Captain is as well, because I felt like that side might get a little bit crowded, so he's there to help them go through each other. And then finally the Storm Lancers on the left there are just going to plan to charge some of those heavies that are coming up on the left. So here's my first go. So as you can see, I can get a long way up the board. This time I this time I ran the Hurricane, so you can see he's way far up the board. In fact, I think he's towing into the zone there. Filled up the zone with Stormblades, making good use of the house there to try and block line of sight from his heavies. I've got 1 Stormblade parked there in a tantalising position. He could potentially get charged by any of his 3 heavies that are sitting there. And then the Storm Lancers and the remaining Stormblades all gathered round to countercharge if he's silly enough to put one of his guys in the zone. Then the Lancers on the other side, again, putting out a little bit of bait. 2 Storm Lancers hanging out there in front, 3 at the back, just sort of daring him to charge my guys. That would open things up for maybe the Hurricane to charge, do some shooting, all that kind of thing. So Leon played a pretty nice tactical game here. That Devastator is extremely annoying, so there's no knockdown, and you can't push him around. So having an armor 23 Jack just towing into the zone, a long way out of all of my charge ranges, thanks to the house there. So it's probably the best thing he could have done, and that prevented me from scoring on this turn, in the zone anyway. So very clever play there. He's got his smoke up from the Kodiaks to prevent me getting line of sight with my Hurricane on Butcher, so I'm not going to be able to knock him down and cause him any damage. And he's run up one of the Juggernauts and a Kodiak up to engage the front 2 Storm Lancers using his run, so he didn't actually have to charge, so he couldn't charge. Just getting up there and engaging them, and engaging them means that they probably can't charge, and Storm Lancers that can't charge are very unhappy Storm Lancers. So yeah, all in all, a little bit more careful from Leon, and pretty solid play, to be honest. And that, as I said, that Devastator is super annoying in the zone. So rather than going for a big feet turn like I did last time, I learned my mistake, and so I charged in a few Stormblades, did a little bit of plinking damage on one of his heavies. I ignored the Devastator. So I pretty much abandoned, unless I can remove that Devastator, and that will have to be on a feet turn, I pretty much abandoned scoring in the zone, but at least I could prevent him from scoring in the zone. So you can see here, the Hurricane's towed in, it's full of Stormblades, and then I've got a few Stormblades just in front of his heavies just to prevent them doing any charging. Devastator's not likely to do any charging because he'll be very easy pickings for all of my Storm stuff here. And I've got a wall of Storm Lancers all lined up there, all outside of 13 inches from Ruin, because we don't want him charging in and killing them all. Ruin you have to be extremely careful about. He's very dangerous, and he can fuel himself with souls, which this list has a lot of. And then Maddox is up there scoring 1 point on the flag. At the same time, got Stormblade up on the right hand side. He's just engaging the Kodiak that's standing in front of Butcher, and he's just within 4 inches of Butcher, which means that that prevents Leon from scoring on this turn. So that was pretty mean. And finally, the Hurricane used its slam guns to knock down those 2 heavies that were in front of all the Stormlancers. And then that enabled the Stormlancers to just completely ignore them, run around, get into their back arcs to avoid getting charged, and then getting ready to really threaten Butcher and all of his backfield support models. So it was a pretty nasty thing to do, is getting those Stormlancers up behind. Still out of range of all the charging, except for Butcher, obviously. But if he charges Butcher, then he has to bring him off the flag. So at this point, we had a bit of a discussion about what Leon should do. So he's going to have a very hard time removing Maddox from her flag on his turn, and I'm scoring points here at the moment. He's a point down. So even if he clears away my Stormblade, who's contesting his flag, he's still going to be a point down every turn. So at this point, he made the decision to abandon the scenario game and bring out Butcher, put him in full rage mode, and start killing some dudes. So here's what the field looks like after he started doing that. So as you can see, Stormlancers on the right up there, a lot of guys moving in just to engage them, just to cause them problems. Butcher has taken care of business himself, killed Lattimore, killed that Stormblade. He's got his Juggernaut right up in the Hurricane's face. He's brought one of his Juggernauts into the zone on the other side, so he's in the zone with a couple of heavies. His Devastator hasn't moved yet. Ogryn is within 3 inches, just in case my Hurricane tries to shoot Butcher. And yeah, he's generally just consolidated his position and prevented me from at least dominating that central zone. But he's still not preventing me from scoring, so I go up to 2 points. So I'm looking pretty good at the moment, because I can just keep ticking over. Every round I'm scoring 2 points, one for his turn, one for my turn. And as long as I can prevent his guys from getting near Maddox on his turn, then I'm going to keep racking up those points. So here's what I do. So the Hurricane... so this is definitely a feat turn, as you can see. That was enough to take down both of the Juggernauts with my Stormlancers and Stormblades. No problem at all to take down the Juggernauts. Hurricane walked up and took a couple of shots at Butcher with his slam guns. The first one hit, which he then gave to the Ogryn, and then I boosted the damage, and that killed the Ogryn. It hit, slammed him back and hit him against the wall where that Argus is standing as well. So there was lots of damage for the Ogryn on that one. The second shot didn't hit Butcher, despite being a Rat 6 and boosting to hit, needing an 8. Didn't get it. So unfortunately, Butcher didn't get slammed, didn't get knocked down. But I'm not too worried, because Butcher is way out of charge range. Even if he does all sorts of nasty movement shenanigans, he's still going to have to clear those Stormlancers out of the way to get to Maddox. So on this turn, I've virtually cleared out the zone, but that Devastator is still causing me problems. I've got Ruin engaged with the Stormlance, so the best he can do is probably just kill that Stormlance. The Kodiak is engaged by the Hurricane, and the Stormlancers are at the back on the right. I actually forgot to activate them all together, so that Argus should probably be dead at this point, but unfortunately not. But it turned out that was actually pretty sensible, because that robs Butcher of an extra 2 inches of movement if he can't move a little bit further, because of the Arguses getting killed because of Vengeance. So yeah, so I go up to 3 points, and I pointed out to Leon at this point, if he doesn't stop me from scoring on his turn on my flag, then I will just score a point on my turn, and then I'll be up to 5 points. So he did his best to try and work out if he could possibly get Butcher contesting that flag, and it worked out that it probably wasn't possible, because he needed to get the charge lanes up. He needed to use Energizer on Butcher to move his jacks, and unfortunately that means activating Butcher, and he actually needed to activate Butcher afterwards to move him past the stuff that the jacks would then be clearing out because of using Energizer. So he was stuck in a bit of a catch-22 situation, but and that allowed me to score on his turn, and then just score on my turn, and then automatically win. So that was a much more solid game from me. Feeling very smug about that, as usual, and very pleased to be beating Leon, as he usually beats me. And very pleased that this list has got a strong game against Butcher with 6 heavies. Is it 6? It was 6 heavies. So yeah, it's I'm pretty keen on playing this list a little bit more in the future. We'll see how it goes. I'll probably play it again this week, and we'll see if I can take on some more different opponents and have a decent chance of winning. Okay, so I've been droning on for a while, so I'll cut it off there, and I'll say thanks very much, and I'll see you on the next one.